So in your Teams, if you hit the three dots, you should be able to see subtitles in any language that you want. So feel free to play with that. Okay, so that's the recording started. So we're going to start today on governance. Now, as I said last week, hopefully you've all read the materials. You've all got a head start because they're all available online. So I'll go through them, but what I'm looking for from you is questions and clarifications. I'm hopeful that you're, excuse me, familiar with the materials already. So the first thing we want to talk about is governance itself. Okay, can I just check you're all seeing that okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So we want to talk about governance and how it fits into an organisation. I'll use the word organisation a lot when we're talking, because governance isn't just about business. It could be a charity, government, local judo club. It could be any organisation that has to make sure that it's doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. So I'll use organisation to mean all of those things, because the principles can apply everywhere, even though the specific implementation will depend on what it is you're trying to do. We'll talk later on about the aims of an organisation. The aim of a business is to make money. The aim of a charity is to help people. Now, the charity may have to raise money to do that, so there will still be financial obligations in there, but the financial obligations stop at actually giving money back to the people that own the company, which actually is where a business's obligations start. That's what they're there for. So I'll use organisation to mean all of those things. So mentally, start thinking about all the different places that you might need proper governance. My computer has been going incredibly slowly this morning. There we go. So anybody who's ever worked or volunteered for, been in contact with any sort of organisation will know that there are lots of layers in that organisation. I have a line manager who has a dean of school, who has a principal. There are layers in all organisations where things happen. That's not governance, that's management. Management is making sure that you do the thing that the organisation is set up to do, whether that's make money, teach students, or provide famine relief. It just depends. The governance is deciding what the aims of an organisation are. Management is about implementing and carrying out those aims. So they're two different things. If for no other reason than there are always competing pressures in an organisation. So in this university, the principal would like me to have classes of 200 and teach everybody at once. I would prefer a class of 20 where I can get to know you and work better with you. So there are pressures. Part of governance is ensuring that the organisation takes note of all those pressures, understands who all the stakeholders are, and that's another word that you're going to see all the time. Stakeholders is someone who has an interest in how the organisation works. Now, of course, that will include employees. For a business, it will include those that own it, but it could be other people in organisations not related to that organisation. Businesses have customers. Universities have students. You're a stakeholder in this university, and you would hope that the governance would take note of what your aims are. We have other stakeholders. We get a lot of money from the Scottish Government because in Scotland all tutorial fees are paid by the government. So clearly the government are stakeholders in the university and want to ensure that we do the job that we are supposed to do. If we decide that we want to build a new lab, then other stakeholders come into account. The local council, who would have to give us planning permission to build that lab building. People who live close to the university, who would be affected by the building works and then the fact that there's a new building there. So there's lots of stakeholders, and you have to think not just within the organisation, but everyone who's related to the organisation. People, organisations, governments, whoever that happens to be. And the aim of governance is to ensure that the organisation works best for all of those stakeholders, financial or otherwise. And I said that the aim of a business is to make money, and that's true. But of course, if a business doesn't look after its customers, nobody's going to spend any money with the business, and their financial aims will be gone. So it's about balancing all that stuff. As part of that, it's really important that everyone understands what's going on. If I own a shop and I go in and tell my employees, be nice to the customers. Why? Just because it doesn't really help anyone. It doesn't really help the organisation achieve its goals, because it's far better if everyone understands why we're doing things, why we're trying to get to specific goals, and the reasons for taking a particular tack for doing that. So it's important that everything is transparent and that people are accountable for what they do. They understand why they're doing it and they understand the consequences of not doing it. That has to come from the top. You can't build that from the bottom. You can't have someone on the shop floor saying, oh, we need to be nice to customers so that the person that owns the shop will make lots of money. I mean, you can, and many do, but if the person at the top of the organisation, if I own that shop and I go in every so often and help behind the counter and I'm really grumpy to customers, I'll soon undermine it. Everything comes from the top. And that has to be an example to everyone else in the organisation. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about how we ensure proper governance. So governance isn't just about do this, do that. Proper governance actually takes all this into account and ensures that everybody's on board. So as I say, we'll be talking about all these things and we'll be talking about them as organisations, but it could be all sorts of things. Governments, businesses, charities, whatever. Now, I'm not seeing any hands. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I don't hear anybody saying anything. I'm not going to stop every 2 minutes and say, do you have a question now? Because you're all big boys and girls. So this is the last time I will specifically ask. Anybody get any questions so far? Okay, if you have, just jump in. Okay, so these organisations should all work the same, but the names might change. So, for example, you might have a government. Now, hard as this may be to believe at times, governments should have a strategy. They should know what it is they want to do. They should know the direction that they want to go in. I'll leave it up to you to decide whether governments do or not. However, it's then up to civil servants to understand what that direction is, to understand what the government want, and to organise that to happen. That will then get, so civil service management will organise that and then pass it down to civil service workers to implement that. So you have a strategy and direction, will then be organised and implemented. Health boards do the same sorts of things. So for our NHS in Scotland, we have something called an IJB, an Integrated Joint Board. The idea is that the health service and social services should work together. If my gran goes into hospital to get an operation, what happens when that operation's over? Does she sit in a bed for 3 weeks until she can get up and walk? Or do you try and integrate with social services so that my gran can go back to her home, but that people come out to help her do whatever she needs to do, food or whatever? So we have an integrated joint board who look at that strategy and try and figure out how that's going to work. The organisation of that is then sent down to other organisations, and this becomes more complicated because there's 2 organisations involved here. Because the hospital NHS part is the health board, so they have to organise the health side, getting people into hospital, getting their operations done. The social services part, getting them home, sending in a home help, is done by councils. So there are 2 organisations who have to organise that strategy, the councils and the health board, and they have to work together to make that happen. And they make it happen, hopefully, jointly. For example, I've said that there'll be a home help going in to my gran, perhaps to make some food. What if the home help goes in at exactly the same time as the on-call nurse goes in to change a bandage? Does the home help hang about until the nurse is done changing the bandage? Do they make the food and the food goes cold? Does the nurse hang about while they're eating their food? A really expensive nurse who could be off doing something else. That would have been organised to make sure these don't clash, and then those sorts of things shouldn't happen. So it starts to become quite complicated. Businesses run in the same way. You will have commonly at the top of a business a board of directors, and they will set the strategy and the direction. That's the governance part. So the top of that triangle, the board, is governance. That's then passed down to the managers of the organisation to organise that, and then implemented by operations people in the organisation. So the bits on the side there stay the same. So we've got that triangle. We've got this triangle of how things work. The strategy and direction stay the same, the organisation stays the same, the implementation stays the same. But it will depend on who's working at it. Is it government, civil service management, civil servants? Is it IJB, council, South Board, civil servants? Is it board management operations? The people doing it might change, but the things on the right here always stay the same. Governance stays the same. That's why I'm saying it applies to all organisations, no matter what they're doing, what size they are. All of these things have to happen. I was all excited because I saw what I thought was a question up in the comments, but it was just saying there's no question so far. Okay, but thank you for that. Thank you for feedback anyway. It helps to know I'm not just sitting here talking into a blank void. You know, feel free to turn on your cameras and things and just pretend that we're all together. Okay, one of the things that organisations use to try and capture who they are, what they do, what they're trying to be, is something called a mission statement. Mission statements get a bad reputation. Does anyone know what the first one there? Dream, believe, achieve. You know what the whose mission statement that is? Is there anybody out there?
Yes. Can you say that again? We were talking about mission statement.
So the one on the screen is dream, believe, achieve. Whose mission statement is that?
Oh, you asked whose mission statement is that?
Sorry, Quadri, you're very quiet. I'm struggling to hear you. Okay, doesn't matter. Dream, believe, achieve is the mission statement for UWS. When you're on campus, look up for it. It's on all sorts of boards and adverts and things. But if you dig deeper, there is a less punchy but more information-led set of sentences to explain what the university wants to do. But it's still very clear what the aims are. Change lives. If you change people's lives, you can transform the communities. We're doing education and research. And we want to send people out so that they're ready, to take on a job and contribute. So these are both kind of mission statements for UWS. Which one do you think works better?
Second one works better.
Second one? Why is that?
Because it is a combination of technical writing and also tells the community or tells the reader that what is the main aim of UWS.
I would agree. The second one makes it very clear what UWS stands for, what it intends to do, and what it hopes to achieve. On the other hand, it doesn't go so well on a leaflet or an advertisement. So this is the kind of greater explanation, which it's hoped will be encapsulated in the slogan. So perhaps we could call that one a mission statement and that one a slogan. Mission statements can be tricky. This one actually works quite well. I think expresses what the organisation is and what it tries to do. Not every mission statement is quite so clear. Mission statement of to help make every brand more inspiring and the world more intelligent. I mean, it sounds great, but it's a mission statement for Avery, who makes sticky labels. I'm not entirely sure how a sticky label makes the world more intelligent. Our mission is to operate the best specialty retail business in America, regardless of the product we sell. And you can see the ellipsis there means I've cut an awful lot out of this. To say that our mission exists independent of the product we sell is to demean the importance and the distinction of being booksellers. So I'm confused. This is for Barnes & Noble, so are they proud of being booksellers or not? Oh yes, for a bookseller, but we'll sell everything else if we can make some money, which isn't an unreasonable aim, but the expression of it is confused. MGM Resorts International is the leader in entertainment and hospitality, a diverse collection of extraordinary people, distinctive brands, and best-in-class destinations. A mission statement is about where you want the organisation to be headed, what you want it to be doing. This isn't a mission statement. That's not an aim. It is just a statement. And feel free to agree or disagree, but it's not saying anything that they're trying to do. Some organisations are much better at encapsulating that. The Alzheimer's Association's mission statement is a world without Alzheimer's disease. And that's fairly clear. You can't really mistake that. That's what the organisation is. That's what it's going to do. All the tricky bit about actually making that happen, well, that's management. Governance says that's what we're going to do. Any of you come across the Creative Commons?
I just wanted to ask, is it not a function of what the business stands for that brings about the trickiness about crafting your mission statement?
Absolutely.
You know, one might not compare Alzheimer's Association to what M&G or Barnes and Nobles, what they're into. So I think these are things that shapes the way you craft your mission statement, right?
Yep, I agree.
And is it possible a mission statement contains your aims and objectives? Will it be clear or clever for you to be able to sink in an aims and objective into your mission statement?
That's where it becomes very tricky.
Oh.
And that's why I'm saying some organisations do it very well. The Alzheimer's Association's aims and objectives are encapsulated in 5 words there. I think they've done that really well. A world without Alzheimer's disease, full stop. That's both an aim and an objective and a statement of what the organisation will be doing. So yes, it can be done, but it's not easy.
True. I agree.
You okay with that? Anything else you want to?
Yes. I'm fine. I agree with your stand. Yeah.
No, you don't have to. I'm just I'm asking. In fact,
Yes,
I quite like
you're
it when you
right.
don't.
You just made a good point, and that's why I said I agree.
Next one, there's the Creative Commons. Has anyone come across the Creative Commons? Anyone know what it is? Okay, that worries me a little. So I'll repeat what I said last week. The prerequisite for this module includes something at UWS we call professional computing practice. So that includes things like ethics, laws, and these particular laws. So again, the things with it, hashes on Moodle, my UWS. And the reason we're a wee bit worried is because copyright designs and patent is where we talk about the Creative Commons. The idea with Creative Commons is you can give people the right to use your stuff with certain restrictions. So the Creative Commons has multiple levels of licensing. So you can create something and you can distribute it using the Creative Commons. It lets people take that material and change it, do whatever they want to it. So I could create this presentation, for example. If I release this under Creative Commons, you could take it and you could alter it for your own purposes. I haven't, so don't, but I could. All that has to happen is that you give a credit. So somewhere in your presentation, it has to say something like, based on a presentation created by Tony Gurney. So I'm basically giving it away as long as you say, yeah, okay, I've used someone else's work here. Next one, similar, but it says you cannot just take it and use it and then claim it as yours. So you couldn't take my work and say, well, I've used Tony's work, but now I've changed it, so now I've copyrighted it and it's mine. This one says, well, if you change it, you also have to allow other people to take your work. So it's kind of feeding it on down the chain. You might want to be more restrictive still. You might say you can take it and use it, but only if you're not making money. So if you're a charity, have at it. If you're a business, talk to me and give me some cash because you've got money and why shouldn't I have some? And it works its way down through different licensing terms up until this one here. You have to give credit. You can only use it non-commercially and you cannot change the work. People use Creative Commons for all sorts of things, presentations, code, all sorts of stuff. So that was my long way around saying, don't forget that you have to do this stuff as well. It's not recorded. It's not as part of the syllabus. What I've said is, remember that the topics in legislation are a prerequisite and are not covered. And it seems to have split that onto 2 pages just to annoy me in class. Thank you for taking 4.5 letters and putting them on the next page. Okay, so make sure you do the legislation stuff as well. Yeah?
Yeah.
Again, I'll take silence as acquiescence.
Yeah.
Hi. Can I ask you a question? Is it like those licensing thing that we produced from the university? Is it also, like a university own whatever the, like a
Sorry, can you
dissertation?
just speak up a wee bit? I'm struggling a wee bit to hear you.
It's about the licensing, like a CC Commons, Creative Commons. It's like the university, like the material that produced at the university is part of the coursework. Is the university owns the product. Like a dissertation or whatsoever that we wrote and we booked. It's the university owns it. Is, for example, if it's a research or something, can I share it with the Creative Commons and get licensed for it, or it's just those material to share with the other people?
Okay, I'll answer the question.
I didn't understand that licensing that the Creative Commons creates and the copyright.
I'll answer the question, but remember that I'm not a lawyer. So you're quite right that everything you create as a student actually does belong to the university. That's a kind of general thing. The legislation tends to say that if you're employed by somebody, things that you create as part of your employment belong to your employer. And that translates to university life as if you write a dissertation, it belongs to the university. If you carry out research, it belongs to the university. On the other hand, most things created in that way, the university are actually keen for you to share, to show that you're creating things and doing stuff. They make you upset if you do some research which has some commercial capability and is useful and might perhaps make lots of money for the university, but in general, they don't mind. That's where legislation and reality merge and have an issue. What you create on your own, on the other hand, you're entirely free to decide how you license that, how you distribute it. So there is a difference between what you do whilst employed, and in this context, employed includes being a student, so you're part of the organisation, and things you do on your own. So that sort of stuff does become very tricky, which is why copyright and patent lawyers are some of the highest paid lawyers in the world. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. It's a little bit clear, more clear. Yes.
That's part of the reason I brought up Creative Commons. What it wants to do is allow people to share things and do stuff, and that's why it's created one of those days. That's why it's created a mission statement that looks kind of like this. It's saying, look, we've got these new tools, we've got these new ways of talking to each other, we've got these new ways of collaborating. Let's do them the best way we can. Here's another decent one. The Australia Department of Health, better health and well-being for all Australians now and for future generations. It's a really good mission statement. They're in the health business. They want people to be healthier. That's the first part. But they recognise actually that part of that is to ensure that people that come along in the next also have good health. So it actually expands it out. So it says something like, well, it's not just about giving somebody an aspirin when they've got a sore head. It's about saying, well, maybe we shouldn't have lead in the water so that people don't get sick in the first place. So it's actually quite a clever mission statement, I think. Okay, I'm going to ask you some questions. I've got 3 mission statements here. Anybody want to take a guess at which organisations they come from? Either come off mute and say it or put it into the chat. Come on, take a guess. Everybody falling asleep? Okay, I'm assuming everybody's fallen asleep. Nobody wants to play this morning.
No, not at all. Just trying to wrap my head around the statements. So it requires some thinking. Number one, we could say someone or an organization that that's into digital marketing.
Okay, something about digital marketing could be.
Could be.
And that's a good way of approaching it, even if you can't think of the company, have an idea of what kind of business they might be in. So digital marketing for number one. What about number two? Anyone?
Scalable deliverables.
Anybody else? Anybody? Any other
I think
thoughts? Any
it
other?
is about. I think the second statement is about customer care services.
Customer care?
Yes.
Okay. What about the third one? Very itchy nose this morning. Must be dust around. Anything for the third one?
The third one could be maybe educational consultancy, things like that.
Educational consultancy. Okay, yeah, could fit in that, I suppose. Any other thoughts? Well, I have to admit, I was cheating. But on the other hand, second one might be some economic organization like Amazon. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, so I was cheating. But on the other hand, you should know that because you should have read these materials beforehand. And if you had, you would know that they're actually made up. They're from something called the Mission Statement Generator. Oops. Which is something that some guy...
Sorry, excuse me, do we have all our lectures preloaded? Are they all available on the modules?
Yes, they are. This...
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay.
If I go to Moodle and go to governance, that's this lecture that we are doing right now.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay.
Everything that we are doing in this course is available from day one.
Okay.
I think the only thing I've added is a syllabus because I've changed the dates on it to be a wee bit early. But everything else is there. All the presentations, all the materials, all the links, all the questions are all there from day one. That's me just scrolling through it and you can see it's all there. Okay?
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, somebody's created something called a mission statement generator. And it's a bit playful. So as I said, sometimes mission statements can seem quite disconnected from the organization. They can be quite untrue, can sound quite weird, in fact. So somebody's come up with a mission statement generator that takes parts of speech, sticks them together randomly and comes up with, our vision is to efficiently manage Six Sigma programs. Six Sigma, for those that don't know, is a thing for quality. So actually, I'm certain somebody's taken that mission statement. We can be relied upon to pursue technology to meet the needs of an ever-changing marketplace. Again, I can think of a dozen organizations that could steal that quite happily. We can be relied upon to continually engineer quality and effective catalysts for change to provide solutions for our partners. So many buzzwords: relied, engineer, quality, effective, solutions, partners.
Partners.
So you can have some fun with that. Okay, so part of governance is knowing what the organization is to do. But the biggest part of governance is making that happen. So it's trying to figure out how you set up the organization to make that happen. What is the organization? What should it be aiming towards? What should it be concentrating on? What are the important parts for that organization? And as I said earlier, you have to take into account everybody that has dealings with that organization, whether they're directly employed or whether that's the wider community or governments or whatever it happens to be. So part of the governance role is trying to understand that, trying to understand the landscape in which the organization exists, how it can best serve all of these people, and putting into place a framework that lets that happen. Now, it could be explicit. So you might say that, well, we operate a distance selling organization. Now, there are rules around distance selling. You know, you have to allow people to send things back within 30 days, for example. You might set up a framework that says, yeah, okay, our organization is going to be better. We're going to let people send things back within 60 days. So that's an explicit contract between you and your customer, the organization and the stakeholder. And it's saying, yeah, we're better. We're going to let this happen. That doesn't help unless everyone knows about it. If you've got somebody in the call center saying, oh no, you bought this 34 days ago, you have to keep it. Having that extra time doesn't help unless you've told everybody and everyone buys into it. That's an explicit contract. What of an implicit one? What if somebody phones back in 61 days instead of 60 and says, yeah, I'm sending this back, can I get a return code? And somebody goes, oh no, it's been 61 days, you can't do that. Oh, but I thought 60 days meant 2 months and I'm just within the 2 months. There's two ways of approaching that kind of problem. You can say, no, here's our terms and conditions, 60 days. Or you can go, oh yeah, I can see how you can make that mistake. Here's your return code, send it back to us. That opens up a whole set of other questions. Is that reasonable to do? And you might decide that it's an implicit contract between you and your customer that you keep them happy. And who really cares about 60 and 61 days? On the other hand, you might have systems in there that say, oh no, it's been outside the 60 days. We can't do that. We can't even cope with it logistically. Well, that's a problem for management to sort out the organization. You could also have a problem where the person that's allowed that to happen, the person in the call center, has been told, oh no, hang on, you have 60 days. How come you've let somebody do it after 61? That's just bad. Come in till we discipline you. Which is, again, against the implicit contract that governance sets out saying, no, we'll look after our customers. And anybody who's ever phoned up a call center will immediately understand the difference between organizations that listen and you can negotiate with, and organizations that just go, no, Rule 7B, Section 6 says. I think we also know which kind of organizations we prefer to work with and which we'll go back to again. So that's the idea about the second part there, about reconciling those things. The customer stakeholder wants flexibility. The logistics stakeholder wants a set of rules that can be followed. Something has to give somewhere. So it's about setting up those issues and trying to figure out how best to make them work together. So you need to have some sort of procedure for that happening. Are we okay with that?
Yes, sir. Okay, with it.
Okay. Well, in that case,
I also want to give you an example. It was like it didn't happen to me, but happened to my brother. You know, it's like a Volkswagen company. They had an issue with the like carbon emission with the diesel vehicles,
oh yeah,
and they says that there is a part had to be changed by the like with a factory mistake, which is cost the Volkswagen millions and millions. And the thing is, they set up a timeline to change that part for reduce the emission. And my brother took his car to the like a Volkswagen garage, and the timeline is just passed with 1 day, and they refused to change that part, and they asked him to pay like over £1,000 just to change the parts. Just with 1 day. He just didn't realize what time it was expired, but he just went there and asked them, and he talked to them, and they say, "So if you give over 1,000, we just change the part for it because the date for the timeline is expired."
so an organization creates a faulty part, then refuses to fix it. I'm imagining your brother and anyone else you've told this story to won't be going back to that organization again, understanding how they approach these things. Who was it, just out of interest?
Anyway.
Yeah, it's a really good example. And you would hope that you wouldn't be treated like that. Okay, as I say, so we're about an hour in. That's a long time to be in a meeting like this. So as ever, we'll take a wee break. So we'll take 10 minutes and I'll see you back here in 10. Okay? Go grab yourselves a cup of tea.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we're back. Everyone managed to get a cup of tea?
Yes.
Good.
Welcome. Yeah.
Okay, let's finish off. So we have been talking about governance, and what seems like a very long time ago now, I showed you this triangle about board management and operations being responsible for these types of parts of the overall implementation and good governance. So let's talk a wee bit more about this thing at the top. If you have a board who have to look after the strategy and direction of the organisation, and I'll call it a board, but it could be an IGB, it could be a government, it could be a council, it could be whatever. But if you have a board that's responsible for things, maybe we should think about the kinds of traits that we're looking for people who serve on that board, no matter what we call it. Maybe we should have people on that board not because they're friends with the managing director or because they went to school with the chairman of the board. Maybe we should think about what sorts of skills they might need to have. Things like finance or human resources. Might even be good if they had an idea about computing or understood how to work in more than one country. Regardless of what specific skills they bring to the table, there should also be more general skills, which I've enumerated there. Why, for example, have I said it's important for the board to be independent? What difference does that make? Anytime. Any thoughts? Okay. Wouldn't it be quite nice if the person who is in charge of the governance of an organisation wasn't beholden to that organisation? By which I mean, wouldn't it be nice if they did what was best, not what was convenient for them? That's what I mean by independent. It shouldn't be locked in. So, for example, if it is a business, it would be quite nice if the people on the board taking the choosing the way that the organisation should be governed didn't have a financial interest, say lots and lots of shares, because that may change the decision that they make. They might make it based on what will be best for their share price and therefore their wallet, rather than what's best for the organisation as a whole. You would hope that they would be rigorous, by which I mean that they are able to take in lots of information, to understand the information, to go through it, and be very details oriented. Going along with independent and the point about finance, you would hope that they would be transparent. That if they did have shares or they had some other interest that might affect their decision, that they would be very clear about it and they would tell everyone about it so that everyone could decide whether or not they think it's made a difference. Anybody who's ever been to any sort of committee meeting will know that there's usually a standing item called declaration of interest. And it basically says, look, this is all the things that we're going to talk about. Is there anything in here that you think you should tell us before you make a decision on this? You declare an interest in it. What would then tend to happen is the person who has declared an interest would not be allowed to discuss or vote on that particular item. Indeed, quite often it's asked for the person to leave the room while the item is discussed so that there's no unconscious influence going on. And you would kind of hope that the people at the top of an organisation would be competent, that they'd be good at what they do. Now, one of the many things for which I blame Boris Johnson is the fact that he's just messed up my slide, because I have a slide that's labelled Foreign Secretary, and this guy is no longer the Foreign Secretary. And the reason that I put it up is because the government is, in essence, the board of the country. You would hope that they would be independent, rigorous, transparent, and competent, and that they would bring some skills, like, for example, international skills. Something you think would be particularly important for someone whose title is Foreign Secretary. It turns out the outgoing Foreign Secretary did not understand that Britain is an island, and that if you want to bring things onto an island, they need to cross some water.
The video's audio is not coming up. I think it's muted.
I'm hearing it here. I'm just checking that I'm sharing the audio as well. Oh. Okay, let's try that again. Better?
Nothing. You can only see you, not the screen. Okay.
I hadn't quite understood the full extent of it. If you
It's fine now.
look at the UK and you look at how we trade in goods,
Oh, for goodness sake, computer.
we're particularly reliant on the Dover-Calais crossing. And that's one of the reasons why, and there's been a lot of controversy about this, but one of the reasons why we've wanted to make sure that we have a specific and very proximate relationship with the EU to ensure frictionless trade at the border, particularly for just-in-time manufacturing goods, whether it's pharmaceutical goods or perishable goods like food. I don't think it's a question so much of the risk of major shortages, but I think probably the average consumer might not be aware of the full extent to which the choice of goods that we have in the stores are dependent on one or two very specific trade routes.
So you had a foreign secretary who didn't understand that trade comes across water if you live on an island, but is telling us that there will be no problem because we'll still get everything that we need. I refer you back to the competent part of my list of things that you would want in a board member, particularly given the current situation we find ourselves in. So, what you need in a board is people who are independent, lots of different skills, and part of that is being able to challenge. So governance is different to management. Management are implementing things. So you guys are cybersecurity. You walk into a boardroom and you go, yeah, what I did was I installed the Simpson router because it's got IP blocking, and it's nothing to do with the fact that my brother-in-law is a sales rep for them. Yes, I know that everybody else in the world uses Cisco, but trust me, Simpsons are better. It would be quite nice if somebody on the board could go, are you sure? There's a reason lots of people use Cisco for their routing. Tell me again how much better Simpsons is. You need to be able to challenge the decisions that are made, but challenge them from a position where you understand what's going on. That's why you want a range of skills. Not everybody can understand finance and HR and IT and international and manufacturing and. So the board should include people who understand at least some of those, so that the challenge to management about why things have happened or why they haven't happened can come from a position of understanding. You would also want them to be highly ethical. So as I said earlier, you want them to make the decisions not for what's best for them or best for their friends. You wouldn't, for example, to take an example purely at random, because it's something that would never happen. You wouldn't, for example, want the board of directors to set up a specialized access channel for procurement that was only available to people who had given you money, to ensure that the only people you bought from were those donors. And you certainly wouldn't put that into place in the midst of a global pandemic where the goods that you're buying are the difference between life and death. That would just be stupid. Who would ever have that happen? You would hope that your board is ethical. And in fact, there are standards that we'll look at that talk about the ethical standards that you're supposed to reach. And those will be enumerated in a code of conduct. You must do this, you must not do that. If someone takes you out to dinner, if a sales rep for Simpsons Routers takes you out to dinner, you must declare it somewhere and say, yeah, they took me out to talk about this, and I don't know how much dinner cost, 30 quid. And you might say, okay, yeah, you couldn't make the 30 quid. Nobody's going to spend lots of money for 30 quid. But what if it wasn't dinner? What if they invited you to a conference and the conference wasn't just in Skegness, it was in Mauritius. And so you got to go to Mauritius for 2 weeks in a 5-star hotel, all expenses paid. Would that change your thoughts about whether to buy a particular thing? So all of this stuff must be transparent. You must have this written down somewhere, and you must be really clear about everything that's going on. So let me give you an example. This is an actual example of an advertisement. We're looking for non-executive directors of a private company called the Highlands and Islands Airports Limited. It runs all the small airports in the Highlands of Scotland. So let's see what their advert says and how that links into the sorts of stuff I've been saying is a good idea. First bullet point is to provide leadership. Yep, okay. That's what we've been talking about, provide leadership. Everything comes from the top, so you have to provide leadership to the whole organisation. understand what's going on and enable risks to be assessed and managed. Now, we're going to talk an awful lot about risk. It's a whole section. And the reason it's a whole section is the reason it's front and centre there. That's the top thing for them. Set the values and standards and make sure the obligations to stakeholders are met. So again, what we've been talking about. Everything comes from the top, and make sure you understand who has an interest and make sure that they're all catered for. Set the aims. So we're back to a mission statement. What is it that we are going to do? When you're setting those aims, you also have to take into account the wider landscape of airports. And in this particular case, you specifically have to take into account the national performance framework from the Scottish Government. Not least because even though Highlands and Islands Airports Limited, the limited means it's a private limited company, it's owned by the government. So not surprisingly, you have to take into account the National Performance Network. So you need to juggle your resources to make sure that you can do all that with the resources allocated from the government. There are other frameworks that you have to talk about and have to understand. And you have to understand them enough to ensure that they're enforced. In this particular case, it's something called the HIAL framework document, the Highlands and Islands Airports Limited framework document. Basically, this is what we need to do. We need to have airports here, here, and here. They have to be available at this time. They have to provide lifeline services. If somebody needs to land a plane to take a pregnant woman to hospital, that needs to be available. What's in place for that? If you're going to join the board, you can't just be joining it to get a link on your CV. You can't just say, oh yeah, I'm a board member, lucky me. You have to contribute. You can't just sit there and say nothing. As a board member, you also represent the company in other places. So you might have to talk to the Scottish Government. You might have to talk to other airports. You might have to talk to airlines. When you attend those things, you'll be doing it on behalf of the company. So they're looking for somebody who can do that and do that successfully. And you should provide enough skills so that you can provide support in meeting the aims of contributing to national outcomes, to understanding the accounts and approving those, to make sure that the financial position is okay against the money that you have, to ensure that the company can continue to the rest of the year. Now, you're not going to make a profit, that's not the point, but it will be balancing money that you get from the government to money that's paid by the airlines to land their planes, to money that you get in from passengers for any facilities that you have. So it's about putting all those things together. It's about working with other organisations to make sure that you're all working to the same aim, and the usual catch-all other tasks that may reasonably be required. So that's a genuine advert. I just copied and pasted that 2 years ago, I think. That's all the things that we've been talking about in the abstract in a specific advert. Those are not unusual. This morning, and I haven't read the whole thing about this, but this morning I looked to see if anybody else was looking for board members. So there's an organisation called Zero Tolerance on Violence Against Women, and they are looking for a chair and trustees to serve. Oops. They're looking for a chair and trustees to serve on the board. If you're interested, it closes on Monday. Let's see what they're looking for. You'll look after the assets. You'll make sure the charity fulfills its main aims. You want to help in the aims of the organisation of understanding violence against women, about getting it into the media, about understanding that violence against women also has effects on other people, including children and young people. So they're looking for people who share that, who can work with that and serve on the board. So that's the advert, the full job description. Takes that and oh, it's just a copy of it. Sorry. I thought it was going to go into more detail. So they're looking for that same kind of skill set that we've been talking about. We're happy with that so far? Okay. So we have a board, but we also have management. So we need to think about where those split apart. And the usual place it's thought of is in terms of setting the aims and delivering the aims. So governance is about setting the aims, and management is about delivering them. You might say, well, that makes it easy for the board, because all they say is, I don't know, you own a shop, we are going to double sales by the end of next month. Well, no, that doesn't really help anybody. Setting unrealistic aims that can't be met doesn't help anybody. There's no way the management can do that. So they will have seen to have failed. You haven't made the aim, so your governance will be seen to have failed. Far better to set realistic aims that can be exceeded than setting unrealistic ones that have no chance of being met. So there is a difference between setting the aims and implementing them, but they should work together. The board should understand the issues that the management will have in actually implementing those aims. Similarly, the management should understand why the board want to do specific things. And that goes back to this being transparent, open about everyone understanding what it is that they're doing and where they're going. And part of the board's job, part of the governance job, is to monitor management, not to say, oh no, you should do it this way or you should do it that way, but to say, have you done it? If they haven't done it, then that's a whole other discussion to be had. And you'll also only know if they've done it if there's information in front of you that tells you whether or not you've done it, whether it's a list of sales figures or a list of people helped or a statement of the number of articles that your organisation has got into the newspapers that month. Whatever your indicator is, you need to understand it and see whether or not you're meeting it, you're not meeting it, and if you're not meeting it, how far away are you? Is it something that you're really happy with, something you're not at all happy with, or something that could be better, but we'll keep an eye on it? That's also something that we'll talk about in more detail later on in this course. So there is a big difference between management and governance. So much so that it is embedded into some of the frameworks. So I said later on that we're going to talk about frameworks for implementing this kind of stuff, and it's in your assessment marking scheme. ITIL and COBIT are two frameworks. And part of COBIT is actually explaining that difference between management and, interestingly, when they talk about this, they talk about plan, build, run, monitor. The next presentation I've got for you is similar. It's called PDCA, Plan, Do, Change, Act. Same idea. Okay, so there's a separation between the aims set by governance and the implementation of those carried out by management. So how then do people in charge of governance understand whether or not those aims are being, if not met, at least moved towards? Well, there must be reports. You must understand what's coming up, and you must get a feedback from management about where you are. So like I say, sales figures or number of articles, or whatever it happens to be. We're doing governance, risk and compliance. Some people think it should be GRCC for governance, risk, compliance and control. And the control might be the shop has only sold this amount this week. Maybe we need to look at this. So there's a control on the amount that we're expected to sell in case we need to do something to make it happen. And again, we'll talk a lot more about how that will work later on. But part of why you guys are doing this, so we talked about this last week, it is something really important in terms of employers. We looked at the job ads that talked about cybersecurity and GRC, but actually another reason is because of this control part. Because we are IT people, we are ideally placed to create automatic reports, if you like, or to create dashboards that show how things are happening right there and then. So we have the ability to say, this was the aim for what we're going to sell, this is what we sold, here's the difference, here's a report on it, thank you very much. Anybody who's ever worked in a call centre or been in a call centre might have seen big boards up on the screen that talk about how long it takes to answer a call. You know, how long before it starts ringing do you pick up? How long do you then spend on the call? That kind of stuff. So real-time metrics about how well you're doing against your aims. As IT people, it's up to us to implement those kinds of solutions, which is also why we need to understand what it is that we're trying to implement a solution for. At this point, you're probably thinking, that's an awful lot. Sounds like a lot that we have to do. It sounds like a lot the organisations have to do. Why bother? Because if you don't, we can be in big trouble. If you don't do this kind of stuff, you soon get a bad reputation as an organisation. People don't want to work with you or buy from you or even be involved with you because you get a reputation as an organisation who can't be trusted. You know, the sort of organisation who might, for example, sign an agreement and then the following month say that they don't agree with that and they want to renegotiate. So clearly they've been negotiating in bad faith the first time round. You can't keep doing that because you get a reputation as being an organisation that can't be trusted. And as soon as you get that, things become an awful lot more difficult. Those are good reasons, but sometimes they're not sufficient reasons, which is to say there are plenty of organisations who are quite happy to get a bad reputation as long as the money keeps coming in. There were times when that can happen, and there's still times where that can happen. The legislative framework for punishing organisations who don't do this kind of good governance isn't always in place. Anyone heard of Enron? Enron were an American energy company. Quite appropriate given the issues that we are having just now. So they would sell on energy. And one of the things that they could do is they had prices that they would charge depending on how much energy was required, how much energy they had. But Enron also owned some of the production facilities, and they would game the system. So they would do things like shut down power generation so that there was less power available so that they could charge more money, and they would make more money from doing that than they would from actually creating the power in the first place. Some of the stuff is quite sickening. You'd have emails that talked about who cares if a granny freezes as long as we get our bonuses this year. They were breaking the law, but it was also poor governance. And while they were breaking the law, while they were doing all these things that were against the law, their accountants, a company called Arthur Andersen, signed it all off and said, yeah, that's fine, go ahead. And I say the company was called Arthur Andersen because after the Enron scandal, no one else wanted to be audited by Arthur Andersen. Because if you couldn't trust them to audit the accounts for Enron, who had been breaking the law for years, how much trust could the organisation and the people it has to deal with have if you say, oh yes, here's our accounts, and we know that they're right because Arthur Andersen have looked at them and checked them over. To which the question is, the same Arthur Andersen that let Enron break the law for years. Oh yeah, that Arthur Andersen. Arthur Andersen was one of the 4 biggest accounting companies in the world. It collapsed in less than 18 months because of a failure of governance. And there are more examples there, and you can read up on those as well. One of the things that America tried to do was this thing there, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, and it tried to tighten up on corporate governance and ensure that there are appropriate fines put in place. Part of the reason I bring it up is because a lot of the organisations that you'll be working for are international. And of course, when you're following legislation, you have to follow the legislation of every company in which you do business. If, for example, you do business in America and therefore have to conform to the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, it's entirely likely that you'll extend that to the whole organisation. Why wouldn't you? If you have to do it in one place, why wouldn't you just do it everywhere? So there's a lot of pieces of legislation like that that you will come across that may not be exactly necessary for where you are, but will be necessary for your organisation to continue doing business. So you might have to conform to that, even though it's not exactly required where you are. Thank you. Tea. Cheers. You'll come across that a lot. Where you won't come across it is in the UK, because there tends to be fewer legislation around that. What the UK has tends to be a framework. And I've put some of those frameworks into your documents. And we'll look a wee bit more in detail at them next week. They're frameworks. So this is a UK corporate governance code. So organisations are meant to look at this, they're meant to understand it, they're meant to follow it. But if they don't, well, that's up to them. There's no legislation behind it. Similarly with the UK Stewardship Code. It exists, it's a thing, but it's not implemented in legislation, so there's no real reason to follow it if you don't want to. And that suits a lot of people who are trying to make money and not trying to build an organisation. I realise I've spoken a lot because I recognise that for many of you, these things are new, very new. So I've tried to
May
sort of
I
put them in
ask a
context.
question, sir?
Pardon?
May I ask a question?
Please.
Okay, it has to do with the governance aspect. Now, taking a cue of the board, in a situation whereby, in some organization, the membership of the board sometimes constituted by the management team. Am I right? Maybe by nomination or by selection.
Not by the management, but often by nomination or self-selection by the board or the owners, not by management.
Not by management. So now the
Although
question
sometimes
is,
management do serve on the board as well. It can start to get a wee bit hazy at the corners.
exactly. Now my question would be the operational policies being used by the board members, just like we have for the management team as well. Who designed this?
It's up to the organisation to decide how they want to set themselves up. So, as I said, there are recommendations like the UK corporate governance standards, but organisations have it within their own power to decide how they govern themselves. That's why it's so important to get it right. There are very few things. So there's a legislative side which they do have to conform to, but in terms of how they run their own organisation, they have a large amount of leeway in how that happens.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, okay. Thank you.
One of the things that we'll look at next week is how organisations have decided to do that. So here, for example, for a local authority is how the local authority have decided to set up a council, who's doing what, and what you're delegating to council workers. So in this case, so to management. We'll look at a few of these in terms of things like this. Scheme of administration. So I talked about an integrated joint board earlier. We'll look at how those organisations have decided to set themselves up. It's up to them to decide how to do it and do it to the best of their ability, which is why you can quite often get quite a variable response. Is that okay?
It's okay.
Any other questions just now? Okay, let me just stop the recording then.